I know, eh? The temptation is real. I
Season
wonder.
5. Oh, go ahead,
No,
Chris. You
no.
wonder. No, no.
Oh, no, 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 no. Do it, do it, do it, do it.
Season 5, episode 39. What were you going to say, Chris?
So
You
we have
wonder?
some I would say some polished colleagues that podcast, right?
Yes, I would
Polished
agree
col
with that note.
I'll send it out into the universe here. Like Stephen Hurley, that's a composed dude there. He's a composed dude in his podcasting, right? Um so just before we hit live, before we hit live, you're saying we gotta pull up on the swearing a little bit. We enjoyed the rogue the rogue mouth a little bit too much before we hit record. So it's true. I think it's okay, let's go meta for a second. So I know on this cast it took me about 2 years before I said shit. I don't know if I've used any more potty mouth than that. But that's very different than my mindset when I was still actively doing chasing squirrels. I was paying attention, minding my P's and Q's. So I like that you mentioned, we got to sort of pull up on, actually, sorry, you said you got to pull up on that, on the swears. But it does make me wonder about our colleagues out there in Podland. How close do they do they crave it? Do they crave to sort of be able to, drop those words every once in a while? Because so it's funny. So here's just, this is my lived reality, my lived experience doing the pod. You do that sort of that time together before you hit record, and it can be extreme. Like you're just rah, 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 and this and that, and sometimes someone would ask, should I swear? And I remember I said, I have the clean rating on Apple. So I said, if when we record this, after this is recorded, maybe I'll put like a car horn honk over the word or something like that. Like that was the most important thing about that was sort of an important thing about the pod, that it kept the clean rating. Now I don't even know what the algorithms, I don't know what would change that with Apple. Like I never read the list, like don't say this word, otherwise it'll get digitally tagged and you're gonna have to change your rating. I don't know what content flips a podcast from adult contemporary into PG-13. But
Recently,
I wonder about our colleagues. That's when, like, some of our colleagues, Stephen Hurley, like I said, composed dude. Ramona, maybe Ramona's listening. I know Jen Giffen out there has a pod. Jennifer Casa-Todd, Shane out there on the West. You got Pete Cameron and Rodenizer and Zach. I forget their name. Like they're dropping in now on the Mad. I want to say Mad TV. It's not Mad TV.
Madcast, but yeah, Mad TV.
Yeah. Like what's the Unprofessional podcast? Is that one? Teachers on Fire? Who's Tim Cavi? What's his?
I think Tim is Teachers on Fire.
I'm wondering. I know Tim's probably not. He might not be checking us out, right? But
He used to. I think we bored him to death. Yeah,
that's okay. But here's the thing. Like, have EduPods changed? Has the culture of EduPods changed such that you can drop an S-bomb every once in a while? You can sort of call something out as a can you call something out as an a-hole? Like, I don't know. Like, are we your comment led me here. It just got me thinking about it, because you and I have said that there's a multiverse, an alternate version of our pod that is a little bit more off the chain than we're doing right now, right? Sort of, we're going to unhook from the sort of like the teacher mindset. Anchoring yourself to teacher mindset, I think, in a lot of ways is akin to saying, I want to keep my job. I want to keep my colleagues. Yeah. And I don't want to be ish. And I don't want to be in the blue pages.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I don't want to be in the blue pages. I like to keep my job.
Although I've yet to see that. I don't want to be the firsts, but I've yet to see, you know, we're found on the blue pages because of content on podcast.
Mm.
We don't need to be the first. That would definitely boost the ratings. We'd have people listening. Yeah, people listening. I was like, these are the dudes. These are the dudes. They're
These are
on
the
every
dudes.
Saturday as they come back through our back catalog to see how offensive we were.
I'm sure that there would be, if you got certain people doing certain educators that I know doing a podcast, they'd be swearing every 2 seconds because that's just how they roll. I mean, they
Hmm.
obviously don't do that in class with kids, but every other moment they're dropping them. Um, I don't know what to tell you. I think every now and again, if it comes out, it comes out, and I don't think that's a Blue Pages thing. But I think if we were just hardcore Rogue Nation going like every second word about everybody we work with and where we work and stuff, I think that'll be cause for concern. Ramona is here. She says good morning. She's winking at
Morning.
us like she does every time she visits.
See, I
Um,
have a high suspicion Ramona's a swearer. I
really,
think
eh?
Ramona's probably a swearer. I think so. I think Ramona has a diverse fluency in fun swears.
Interesting. I
Yeah, I
mean,
think I
it's
think that's it.
possible. I mean, I could see Ramona dropping the f bombs as she's cooking those cookies and roasting those turkeys and things not going well. I could see
Mm,
that.
mm.
Um, Other than that, though, I have a hard time. Obviously, I'm stereotyping. I'm putting Ramona in a box. She's here. She's welcome to tell us what she thinks of that. She says that the Shock Jock Edu podcast, that would be funny.
See,
There are dudes
but
that would try to do that. There
I
are.
and I love that. I love that. See, shock jock I wouldn't go shock jock because like it's so if we take the whole Howard Stern kind of like one of the biggie names that sort of went, I think ended ultimately went to satellite radio. I guess that's still a thing. Baking f bombs. Yeah. There's that whole like Stern style. I mean, you have there were some um whatchamacallits, like there's been some radio hosts, CFNY for a while has had a few intentionally offensive, like that became the shtick. And I think that that part of shock jock, that's not what I'm it's not what I would be angling towards for sure. Like that's not what necessarily what I'm suggesting here. I think it's just where you know you don't have to be a shock jock necessarily to just know the moments where you sort of choose the path as it kind of occurs in your brain. And if you have the, I guess the self reg or the self control, not self reg, the self control to kind of pull up and say, yeah, whoa, Cluff, like don't say that. Like you to see yourself about to go too far, um, you wouldn't stop yourself. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm talking about a slippery slope here because there definitely isn't, not every topic and every time are there things that I want to swear about, but there's a certain emotional kind of fabric, like you're the way passions change depending on the words that you decide to use to describe those passions, right? um yeah, it's just a sort of just thinking that through a little bit today, I don't know why. I think probably because the conversation we started about my time back in the restaurant.
Hmm.
So
Your time in the kitchen is akin to my time working nights at a grocery store. And
yeah.
not and I'm not trying to bring them to the same level. They're not. But we were talking about the type of people that might work in those situations. And I can say it because I worked in two or three different stores, night crew. Seemed like the only time I could get a job, which is funny because I guess they saw me maybe as a rogue, but the people I were working with were friggin' scary. Some of them were scary. Some of them were outright dudes that had they. Okay, so here's the other thing too: it was 99% guys. Okay, um, dudes with families who are my age now, back then, and that was their full time job. So they had two kids and a wife. and a house and a couple of cars, and they worked nights. They were lifers. We called them lifers. I guess they started when they were teenagers at the grocery store, and they had benefits and a great pay for what they were doing at the time, and they were going nowhere. They would admittedly say that they hated people. They wanted nothing to do with humans. And so it's funny too. A couple of them, like, so you get to know these people, right? When you're working full time hours in the summer. When I mean summer, I'm talking like April to September type of thing, right? Full time, and you
Mhm.
get to know them because you start to be friendly with them. They start to open up to you, and this would always come up at lunch. So at lunch, which was like 2:30 in the morning, everybody would stop working, and we'd all go sit in a certain place, and we would eat, and some people would talk and some people wouldn't talk. But it's funny because everybody still came to that meeting place, even if they didn't want to talk to anybody. And you'd hear stories. Like I remember, okay, so I was working. Oh man, I was doing night crew, and I was working at the university, and I was in the newspaper. I was on the front page of the Ottawa Sun for work that I was doing with the university, like a welcome program for students. And the newspapers come, and they looked at the newspaper, they looked at me. Half of them were laughing, the other half were chirping. It was like horrible, okay? But one guy comes over and sits beside me as he's eating his sandwich, and he says to me, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, you doing this thing at Carleton, you go to school, like, why are you here? Like, why can't you get a real job?" And I'm like, "Bro, it's meant to be. I'm here. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I apply to jobs all the time. That you guys called me, here I am." And he's like, "You got to get out of here." And it was an interesting moment because this guy, he was rough around the edges to say the least. And he was like, in that moment, it was like the light was shining down on us, like we were on stage at a play, and the light was shining down on us, and we were doing our thing, and he was like, "You got to get out of here. Like, whatever you do, do not keep doing your university thing. Get the hell out of here. You don't belong here." And he was saying it all, like, with care,
I
right?
was
Like,
saying
"You don't
it
belong
was like the best case scenario for othering. They're like,
here.
you ain't this. In
You
any
ain't one
other
of us," right?
yeah, in our current sort of version of equity, we're like, this moment is offensive. In
He
this, it's like a supportive moment.
100%. So, long story short, th I did kinda belong there. I did kinda belong. There was part of me that enjoyed not having to dress up nicely and go work in like an office or something. I could come as I was. I could
Mhm.
say what I wanted to say. The only measure of success with these people was that whatever job they gave you, you got it done and you did it well. That was
Yeah.
it. They didn't care if you swore every 2 seconds because, like, there were guys there that were whacked. Like, even the crew chief was like, "That guy's nuts. Stay away from him." But they put him in the freezer, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, the freezer was stocked. It looked great. Everything was good to go. And yet this guy, he reminded me of Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was just
Yeah.
ADHD bouncing off the walls. But if you told him what to do and you gave him the timeline, he'd get it done. And so I'm kind of blessed, I guess, when I think back to that, because I did learn a lot from those guys. Nothing about how to be socially, but everything about work ethic and grinding it out and getting your job done. So that was good. Ramona says maybe she drops a few of the nasty words on the golf course.
Yeah, see, and I suspected as much. Um, so I get the whole sort of time and place and your different people around, depending who your crew is. I get all that. I get all that. I just yeah, our fellow podcasters. I'd be curious if our fellow podcasters, if in their like in the on ramp where you're kind of just doing the warm up. I don't even know what it's called technically. Do you know what it's called? what do you call that when you're just in the green room chatting it up before you actually start talking? I'm sure there's a technical term for it.
You and I we call it the on ramp.
We call it the on ramp, but I don't know if is that us? Like, is that us just like figuring out the jargon, so to speak? Who knows? But I'm wondering if other podcasters have experienced that there's a bit of you're stepping into podcast parlance, right? You know, like you feel like you're inauthentic. You're not repping, you're repping what you perceive to be the the podcaster mindset, let's say.
Okay, so okay, on Twitter, Beth Lyons responded or is responding to us. She said, first of all, happy Saturday. She says that as she's gotten older, her potty mouth has grown, but she's very good at turning it off when in professional settings.
Mm.
I'm not surprised. Beth strikes me as like a really put together pro. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Yet Beth also likes to have fun and do her thing, and this is the vibe I get. So totally, like, don't even know her, but I'm telling you what I know from her social media presence, I guess.
I can remember I had a student way back in the day, first year teaching, and the students smiled all the time, like it was their default sort of like personal emoticon. It's just, you know, whether they were stressed or whether they were angry or whether they were into it, whatever it is, their default is their face fell into a smile. And I can remember I had a conversation with them one time. They were really stressed out or something. They felt like they didn't have they didn't have support for something. I forget what it was. They felt like their friends just weren't getting them. And they said, and this person said, you know, just because I'm smiling all the time doesn't mean that I'm happy.
Mm.
And it kind of gave me an early lesson in teenage psychology 101. You know what I mean? That sometimes because a person is smiling, like if that they just might not have access to other emotional states or feel safe to sort of express emotionally other feels. And I often think about that with people. And it's not like I need my crews, the people that I hang around with, to always be swearing. I mean, if they want to, go ahead, whatever, do it, right? But it's funny. I mean, you know, the learning to become a teacher doesn't really what doesn't happen as you build your pedagogy, I think, is an inquiry into becoming a more authentic person. And someone, this comes to mind, self-editing begins once recording starts. Okay, so yeah, Ramona talking about the self-editing. Someone mentioned the whole it was a Twitter convo, someone talking about what it is it was when I put out the tweet about what topics do you want to have a part of staff meetings, and someone put in there talking about creativity. And you know, part of creativity, we've done these conversations. There's an element of how do you support risk, right? Because in order to kind of get to creativity, I think it goes hand in hand talking about risk. So I think part of the when we talk about teacher, whatever, like teacher authenticity, I think gets excised from the human authenticity. It's almost like there's a list of things, there's a list of elements that are sort of so it's almost like a fork in the road. Being a really great human in your personal life is somehow slightly different and slightly different than being a good person in your teacher life. Not a good person, whole person, let's say. There's still a split there. And I'm not saying that just because you're always swearing, you know, with your friends, that you need to roll in and start swearing all around the school. It's that's not that's I think that's oversimplifying it a little bit, but there's something there, right? There's something there. So um I don't have a really great way to unpack this. I'll just go back to that whole, is there something more dangerous? Is there something more dangerous at work? Potentially dangerous at work, um, by stopping ourselves from swearing than actually swearing? Like, do you learn to be a less authentic version of yourself? Do you get comfortable with the self-editing? Does that limit, what limits does that place on your creativity and who you can become?
I appreciate your question. I want to hit on what Ramona said, and then I want to answer your question. Um, Ramona says guests are very conscious of what they're putting out there, and the host hates editing. So you'd have to edit it out. This reminds me of when I did a podcast where I like would interview people, I guess, or have a conversation with a different person every time. I remember
Roland
time
Chidiac connects, baby. Say the words.
RCC, Roland
RCC.
Chidiac
Yeah.
connects. Um, I would always say to them, "Is there something you don't want me to talk to you about?" And then they'd think about that, and then I'd say, like, I'd tell them, "You can say and do whatever you want," um, because they sometimes were concerned about, "Well, I want to talk about this, but I don't know." I'm like, "You can talk about whatever you want." Um, that was just the way I rolled. I was like, "You can say what you want," and I don't, unless they told me to edit it out, I probably wouldn't have. I probably wouldn't have. So, and that never happened. I don't think anybody ever swore. Um, and there were only like, I don't know how many I did, but there were only two or three where people said to me, "I don't want to talk about this, this, and this." And I was like, "Awesome, we won't." And that was an interesting moment too, because I got the vibe that they got the vibe that I was going to judge them based on that, or that I wanted them on my podcast to talk about certain things.
Hmm.
And that was one of those certain things. So then they're like, I'm like, "No, that's fine." Like, I wrote it down. I'm not going to go into that area. I'm not going to ask you about that stuff. Because I remember one of my guests, don't remember which one, but I remember there was this person was in the middle of a shitstorm. And she was like, I don't want to talk about any of that. And I'm like, "That's fine." And she was like, "Really? You brought me on here and you want to talk about my why, but you're not going to touch that?" I said, "You just told me not to, so I'm not going to." So the only other options we have is you leave and we don't do the podcast because you don't trust me, or you stay and we do the podcast and you trust that I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. And it was jovial, like it was good, but it was a moment of, if you don't want to talk about that, I'm going to honor you with that. I'm not going to bring it up. She was like, "Okay, thanks. No problem. It's not why I'm that's not why I wanted you on." But anyway, um your talk about authenticity. For me, this is a tough one for me. I don't think it's I don't think it's inauthentic. I think there's a time and place, and I'm not going to swear all the time in front of my grade threes. Um, Whereas I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think I should be doing that in front of them all day long. And I probably think that the people above me would also say that that's not appropriate. So it's like I could do it all day and be like, "Yeah, I'm good. This is how I roll." But my boss and their boss might be like, "Yeah, you're not doing that." Or, like, if you're going to keep doing that, we're going to have to start disciplining you, right? I don't think they would think it's cool. And if I were a principal and I found out my grade three teacher was swearing every 5 seconds, I'd probably say, "Hey, I don't think this is the time and place for that language." And if you really, like, if you don't feel like I'm letting you be your authentic self, I'm sorry. Let me call the SO then. Let's bring the SO in and see what they think, because maybe I am being a little strict with you, and we'll hear what my supervisor thinks and we'll go from there. Um, so I don't think, like, I think there's a time and a place. And like in my new job, having worked with like grade 10s, 11s, and 12s, some of them use colorful language the entire time we're working together. And at first they'd apologize, and I never said anything. Like, I was like, "I don't care." Hey, for me, here's the thing: if you're in grade 11 and you're actually at my virtual meeting, the time you said you were going to be there, and we're actually doing some of the work, that you're supposed to be doing at school, and you decide to drop an F-bomb here and there, I was okay with it. Maybe other people aren't, but I was okay. And the first few times it happens, they apologize. Oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to. And then after working with them for like a month and a half, it just rolls right off their tongue and they just keep going. They just keep going. And I'm like, to me, that means that they're comfortable with me. And then the other thing it means is that for me, I'm not letting that get in the way of their learning. Now, what does that look like when they end up back in the classroom with like neurotypical students and stuff? That's a whole other situation. But with me, you want to drop F bombs and S words and whatever, I don't care. I'm here to re engage you. If you need to drop some of that as you're being re engaged, I'm good. But that's me, right? I got colleagues who have said to me, I have no idea how you do your job. I would never want your job. And here I am thinking, this is my dream job. I finally have the job I've always ever wanted that didn't exist. So it's awesome to see the two worlds, right? And here's the other thing, then I'll stop. I don't want to be an intermediate teacher. Like if they called me tomorrow and said, "Yeah, your job's done. We're putting you in a grade 7 and 8 class," I'd be like, "Stress leave. I'm out of here. I don't want to teach a grade 7 and 8 class. I'm happy to do it the way I'm doing it now. You want to put me in a classroom, grade 1, 2, or 3, or now you can throw me into high school because I'm high school qualified. So, but grade 7 and 8, no thanks. I'm not doing that. I don't want to run that show every day, all day for a year, but I'm happy to work with those students in the capacity that I'm working with them now." So anyway, yeah, it's funny. Time and place is my thing with the swearing. And even then I fail. But at work I'm good. But in real life, I fail with the time and place.
Beth messaged something here. Oh, interesting thought. Teach yourself versus real self. Can EDUs ever fully be authentic at work? Limits on creativity. Need to think more on that. I just maybe it's just an awareness of what, I think about all the different spaces that I have worked in and the spaces that I have connected with people and all the different ways that I connect with people. And maybe this is just a moment of kind of noticing that blurring the lines may be useful. You sort of get used to, I think I'm definitely speaking for myself here. I've gotten used to the convenience of relationships at school and the different ways that you sort of handshake a moment and the version of me that I'm comfortable with people seeing, right? The version of me. Part of this, we can use the word, we can use swears, but there's a whole lot of different sort of questions that you could ask yourself about, maybe less about am I being the authentic version of myself. um I got a bus soon, but yeah, I got a bus soon. But I can remember helping I forget her name. Jill Stambolich. I helped her out one time. She was teaching a music AQ. And I forget why, yeah, I forget how I forget how we connected. I forget why she thought I would be a good speaker to come in and talk at her AQ, but I did. And I came in, I was talking a little bit about digital networking. So a little bit of like that, Twitter could be a thing, but just Twitter, digital social media inclusion, how you can have conversation, productivity, curation, that kind of stuff. This is a few years back. But one of the conversations that came up was people's aversion to using the social media was that people at work would be able to see their personal life. There was this really, someone put it quite clearly, I don't want people to have any access to my personal life. I guess I'm in a space where I'm starting to analyze how has my own growth been stunted by not sharing that kind of stuff. Like how would my existence, not necessarily even my relationships, but let's say that's synergistic. How is my existence in my work as a whole human? Because you do arrive there right up to the front door. You're in your car rocking out and you open the door and turn down the music right away just so people don't, hey, were you listening to Joan Jett and the Blackhearts or whatever, right? Some Tchaikovsky or something. They're like, oh, what? Clough listens to classical music, right? And then you feel like you have to answer for that somehow, as opposed to just let people soak it in. So I think maybe I'm just on that space on the other end, because the one person at that AQ said, yeah, like I don't want to talk with my students about the fact that I went to a baseball game on the weekend, which to me strikes me as really low level kind of person. Like the stakes are really low when you talk about, the baseball game. But for some people, that's high stakes. So um, I think asking the question, can you ever be authentic? Well, the answer is yes. Yes, you can be authentic. I think part of how you self-assess what's authentic shifts a little bit. Like, I don't even think it's fair to say more or less authentic, because
Mhm.
I don't have a sense. I don't have a sense like a higher volume of authenticity feels any different than just not having to actively decide not to do a thing, or to actively notice I can't access a thing. Like that's the thing that I notice. We could put swears in there, but that's just more of a kind of like a fun, a fun way to look at it. Because, like I said, I noticed that we've said it would be fun to have a podcast where we just did not have to worry about OCT. Hey,
Oh, yeah.
OCT, we know you're out there. We see you're out there. We know you're out there. Someone in the digital media services is like, we got to pay attention to these two.
I know you have to go,
I
and
do.
the beeping is going. Heidi says, "Hi,
No, that's
Fran."
on the radar. That was the radar.
Right.
The radar. We're
Oh,
on
sorry.
OCT's radar. Yeah.
Do you feel that this has changed over the years of your teaching career in relation to profession versus personal life? I'm not 100% sure what Heidi's asking, but I will say that
Comfort, maybe the comfort in.
there are, you know what? For me, it's who's with me. With
Mm,
certain people, I'm happy to talk about my family and like the things we do and stuff. And then other people, I do not want to expose them to that. There have
mm.
been times where I've been in the workroom and I'm talking to one teacher and we're talking about the weekend and like being at a hockey tournament, whatever. And then somebody else will walk in and zip, Chitty Act's done. They're like, "Oh, did I
That's it.
interrupt?" I'm like, "No, you didn't interrupt. I just don't want to talk to you about my family." Heidi says, "Yes, what you share, how you share." Yeah, for me, certain people. There are certain people I work with that it's business 24/7. I don't talk about anybody in my family. I don't even know if they know I have a family, um, and I don't care because that's I get to choose what information I give out to people, and
Mhm.
it's funny, some people, yeah, they walk in the room and zzz, I'm done. I'm not talking about my family. I'm not letting you into that world. And then Ramona says, is it a withholding of authentic self to protect for professional reasons to armor up? I've backed off on the armoring because I'm much more aware of the armor, and I've got a beautiful armor suit. It was built
Mhm.
when I was like in my early teens. It's beautiful. I try not to put it on too much, but for me, it's just, oh, Jimmy's in the room, and I don't want to talk about my wife when Jimmy's around. That's all. Okay. Um, Heidi says, interesting. My brain goes to students and how they feel in the same way. I'd like to think I'm more open to my students. If they don't want to talk to me about certain things, I'm good. If they want to, I'm good. If they drop F bombs, usually in grade 3 they didn't, but in my new job, they swear all the time and I don't care. I'm looking for content. I don't care about all the stuff. I know, Chris, you got to go, so I don't want to ask you any
I'm
questions.
going to high tea, yo. Family's
He's
going
going to
to
high
high
tea.
tea. Little sandwiches and fancy pastries. The one, can I just put a challenge back to Heidi there? And I think
Yes.
it's something that I am actively challenged with. It's this idea that um that everything we do is in service to students. And the only reason I put that in there is that at some point, those students don't positively help me grow. Like at some point, what I do in service to students, and this isn't me, I'm not looking to I'm not looking to burn down the system here. I get the rules of engagement for my job. I get the compassionate frames. I get the equity. I get the intention. I get the OCT rules, my union rules, all these things that say these are all the jawbreaker layers of who you're expected to be in the classroom. And I get it that you can do 99% of those. You can do 100% of those. And if you don't love doing the job, you still suck. I get all these kind of like things activating. And yet I still come back to the question, though, is that can you explore your authenticity as an independent variable? You don't do it relative to the people that are in front of you. And how deeply can you sort of like explore that? And I get it. You sort of deep dive onto that, and you're like, "Whoo!" You're coming back up. You're like, "That was way too pressurized. Like, I almost went too far. I almost went too far. There was no coming back." AKA dropping an F bomb about your party weekend with your grade 3 students. I would say you've probably gone too far. You would, right? But how about the other thing? How about the talking with a colleague in your doorway? Talking with the colleague in your doorway, and maybe you drop an F bomb about your weekend, and you know that that's a space for and I mean the doorway, like in the hallway, and pulling up that conversation, like almost knee-jerk style, because you think you hear someone coming down the hall, down the corner. So you pull it up and you stop. That's the moment right there that I think I'm trying to just kind of tease apart a little bit, where the system has basically gets you to actively surveil yourself to a level that you don't get to test drive any of that stuff. Right? So can we talk about authenticity? I think we should talk about authenticity, because I think there's a whole lot of other less safe identity spaces to talk about, where we encourage students to do that. Don't let school tell you who you are. Right? Don't let school limit who you are. Don't let school take away from who you are. Next podcast topic. Yeah.
Heidi
Maybe.
doesn't know how we roll.
Yeah, no guarantees, Heidi. I think Heidi gets some measure. Heidi's been lurking and sort of like linking with us for a while, so she knows the topic may come up. Maybe it's timely. Maybe it's only timely. Like some of us are all sort of stepping back into the super suits and fulfilling other people's expectations of who we need to be. So I don't know.
Christopher, did you draw anything today?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, I love it. A swearing emoji with the halo on top. That's for me, right? The
Of
angel,
course,
saint,
it
Catholic thing.
is.
And Ramon is going to end it this week by telling us to have a great week. Have a great week,
Mhm.
everybody. Thanks for your participation today. This was season 5, episode 39 of Decoded Podcast. Peace, Clough. Have fun with your
Peace, man.
bourgeois friends at high
I'm
tea.